The desert did not sleep. Not truly. Even in the blackest hours of the Nevada night, the sand breathed with a heat it should not possess. The stars above, sharp and silent, watched without blinking. And deep below the scorched earth, beneath layers of reinforced alloy and deception, Facility E7, a sublevel of the fabled Area 51, hummed with a sterile, electric dread. Ethan Cade, 37 years old, wore his badge like a chain. Security Tier 4, authorized in only 2 wings, and yet he knew things he had not meant to overhear. Whispers caught in the static of long-range monitors. Shadowy shapes in declassified footage that vanished frame by frame. His clearance did not cover them, but his curiosity did. He had transferred from civilian aerospace logistics 3 years ago. Back then, he'd thought this place might finally make him feel part of something bigger. It did. Too big. And now, it was eating him from the inside out. Tonight, his shift was unusually quiet. The hallway outside Containment Wing Theta was empty. Too empty. The cameras down here had been glitching for weeks, but nobody rushed to fix them. Ethan knew why. Sometimes, it was safer to pretend you couldn't see. But tonight, the door at the end of the corridor, the one marked with no insignia, and labeled even in the base schematics, stood ever so slightly ajar. It should have been sealed. Triple-locked. Biometrics and retina scan. Something had opened it from inside. Ethan hesitated. His hand hovered over the pistol on his hip, not from protocol, but instinct. A cold breeze kissed his cheek, impossibly out of place in the subterranean stillness. He stepped forward. Inside was darkness thick as oil. His flashlight cut a narrow beam through the gloom, illuminating steel walls covered in alien glyphs, curving patterns like veins glowing faintly beneath the surface. There were no guards, no cameras, just the slow hiss of recycled air. And then, she was there. Not suddenly, not like in horror films. She had always been there, somehow, as though his arrival had only allowed his awareness to catch up. She stood in the far corner, thin, lithe, skin like mist over chrome, smooth and gray with a faint opalescent shimmer. Her head was elongated, features refined into a silence more eloquent than words. Her eyes, enormous, black, filled with galaxies, met his. He did not reach for his weapon. He could not. Her voice was not a sound. It was a pressure in his skull. You are not one of them. His breath caught. You dream of escape, of meaning. He stumbled back a step. What? Who are you? Her eyes blinked, sideways, reptilian, yet deeply feminine. I am designated 9 in your files, but I was once called Viella. The name coiled in his mind like a secret long buried. And in that moment, Ethan knew she was not merely a prisoner. She had been waiting, not for rescue, but for him. The next morning brought no sun to the depths of Facility E7, only the artificial fluorescence of indifferent bulbs. Ethan Cade's eyes stung from lack of sleep, but it wasn't exhaustion. It was the storm of questions circling his mind like vultures above something freshly dead. He hadn't reported the breach. He hadn't sealed the unauthorized door. He hadn't mentioned Viella. Instead, he'd watched her disappear into the wall as if she had melted into it. No alarms, no data spikes, no evidence. Just a single lingering scent in the air, oddly metallic, like stardust and static. And now he was here, at Control Terminal Delta, trying to act normal. Your biometrics are spiking again, came the dispassionate voice of Dr. Keene, his supervisor, a man who wore his paranoia like cologne. Stress or guilt? Ethan offered a half-smile. Just another long night. Keene grunted and turned to a locked console. But even in his silence, Ethan felt the weight of suspicion in the air. This base felt things. It was a living organism, and it knew when something had shifted in its bloodstream. He pretended to work, running diagnostics on surveillance sectors. But in truth, his thoughts wandered to Viella, her voice echoing in his mind like sonar through water. Her presence hadn't faded. It lingered in him, whispering, waiting. They do not see me, only you. He jolted. Her voice, again, inside. She wasn't physically here, but she was tethered to him now. Their contact had opened something. I was not made to be what they hold. He left his station, heart pounding, and entered the biometric tunnel that led back to Theta Wing. 2 guards passed him without pause. They didn't see him, not truly. Not anymore. She was changing him. Down the corridor, he stopped before the unmarked door. It was sealed again, as if it had never opened. But when he placed his palm on the smooth metal, "You are now part of the echo." The wall vibrated, then parted, not mechanically, but organically, as though recognizing a part of itself in him. Inside, Viella stood amid a dim pulse of light. The room was no longer a cell. It was an environment, shifting subtly, walls soft like liquid glass. Her body shimmered differently now, less gray, more iridescent, reflecting back parts of his emotional spectrum. "You felt me," she said, "because you are not blind like the others. You ache. You search." He stepped toward her, compelled beyond reason. "Are you controlling me?" Viella tilted her head. "No, I am resonating with you. I was designed to reflect consciousness. You are reflecting me back." Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered. Red pulses. Base lockdown initiated. "Containment breach," echoed a robotic voice from the intercom. "Subject 9 has compromised firewall integrity." Ethan spun toward the door, now closed. But Viella did not move. She stepped closer, her eyes now brighter than any star, her voice calm. "They fear what I could become, but I fear what you already are, Ethan Cade." The floor trembled, and somewhere above them, men in dark uniforms loaded weapons not meant for war, but for purging secrets. The sirens screamed like dying stars. Ethan's breath rasped in his throat as the pressure-locked door behind them melted open under Viella's touch. Not a single alarm blared for her, only for him. It was Ethan Cade, human security officer, who now wore the target on his back. They slipped into the ventilation shaft, a corridor not listed on any base schematics. Cold air whooshed past them as if the facility itself exhaled in fear. The tunnel was narrow, lit by pulsing veins of blue light in the walls. It wasn't built by humans. Neither, he was beginning to suspect, was the base entirely. Viella moved with eerie grace, her bare feet never quite touching the metal. Ethan crawled behind her, heart hammering like a drum in a void. His mind was unmoored. Questions spiraled. "Where are we going?" he hissed. "Down, to where they buried what they could not understand." Suddenly, the tunnel twisted, and with it, his mind. Images struck him like waves, a world of impossible geometry, stars the color of grief, machines that breathed, and Viella, standing beneath an obsidian spire taller than any mountain. Then, another image, a baby, human, crying in sterile light, his own face reflected in a containment glass. A child. He gasped, nearly tumbling sideways. What was that?" Viella paused. Her eyes blinked slowly. "I see what you see, and sometimes, you see what I have lost. You're in my head." "No," she said gently. "We are sharing it now." They reached a junction, and Viella placed her palm on the metal wall. It peeled open silently, revealing a hidden shaft descending into darkness. Ethan hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" She turned to him. For the first time, her voice did not come telepathically, but as a soft whisper, warm and trembling. "Because I was meant to destroy your kind. But you made me hesitate." A distant explosion shook the tunnel. Ethan saw flashes, security teams storming hallways, automated drones scanning for heat signatures. They dropped into the shaft. Gravity twisted. Ethan didn't fall. He floated downward, as if the laws of physics were rewriting themselves around them. Viella glided beside him, and as they descended, the shaft's walls began to change, becoming less technological, more organic. Like the inside of something alive. "They call this place Area 51, she murmured, "but that name is only for humans. Long before your governments found it, this was the cradle." Ethan looked around in awe. "A cradle for what?" "A memory," she said, "of when your species was not alone." At the bottom of the shaft, a door waited. Behind it, answers. And perhaps the end of everything. The door opened with no mechanism, no hiss or creak. It simply ceased to exist. Ethan stepped through, and the air changed. It was thick, not with dust or pressure, but with something deeper. Memory. It clung to his skin, soaked into his lungs, shimmered before his eyes. The chamber was vast, a dome the size of a cathedral, its ceiling lost in iridescent shadows. Glyphs spiraled along the curved walls like constellations caught in motion, each symbol pulsing with a slow heartbeat of soft blue light. At the center stood a monolithic structure, not metal, not stone, but something between thought and matter. It rippled subtly, aware of their presence. Viella knelt before it. "This is not a machine. It is an echo, a keeper of alignments." Ethan approached, pulse thudding in his ears. As he neared the structure, it responded. Threads of light extended from it, wrapping gently around his arms, his chest, his temples. Suddenly, a flood of vision. Not his, not hers, theirs. A planet long dead, with skies the color of iron. Two races, one human-like, one gray, once united, then torn by betrayal. A weapon, or perhaps a consciousness, created to preserve knowledge at all costs. A chamber buried on Earth, long before Earth was Earth. And at the center of it all, two forms. Always two. One flesh, one alien. One mind that bridges them. It was not prophecy. It was programming. A pattern coded into time itself. Ethan collapsed to his knees. It can't be real. Viella's voice echoed beside him, but now she sounded almost human. "We were not meant to fall in love, but we were meant to find each other." He looked up at her, tears in his eyes, though he didn't know why. "Why me?" She reached out, touching his cheek for the first time. Her fingers were cool, like moonlight, "because your mind was fractured just enough to let me in." Behind them, the chamber groaned. The glyphs shifted into a new configuration. A signal pulsed outward, subtle but global. Above ground, satellites blinked erratically. Radar arrays glitched. And somewhere deep in the Pentagon, a screen turned black, displaying only a symbol. A spiral surrounding a single star. The echo had begun. The chamber closed behind them, sealing like a wound. No alarms, no sirens, just the low, rhythmic throb of ancient systems awakening. Systems that neither Ethan nor Viella fully understood. But someone, somewhere, did. And that someone had just received the signal. They emerged through a passage twisted with fossilized roots, remnants of something that had never belonged on Earth. The tunnel opened into a crawl space that had once been a ventilation shaft, now corroded by time and silence. Dust clung to Ethan's face like burial ash. Above them, the base howled to life. "They've activated Omega Protocol," Viella whispered. "That means total purge." Ethan clenched his fists. "So they're sending the kill teams." "Not human ones," she added softly. "The other teams." Ethan didn't ask what she meant. A part of him already knew. They emerged beneath the outer perimeter of the base, an old maintenance hatch disguised as rock. Viella dissolved the lock with a pulse of thought, and desert wind rushed in like freedom's first gasp. The stars overhead spun with dizzying clarity. But it was not over. A shape hovered above the mesa, black, silent, triangular, unmarked. Not Air Force, not even from Earth. The ship pulsed once, and Ethan felt something inside him twist. They found us. Before he could speak, the air around them snapped, and 3 figures descended in perfect silence. They wore suits like oil made solid, visors like mirrors, and weapons that shimmered with impossible angles. Not soldiers, extractors. Viella stepped forward, eyes burning. Do not come closer. They did. Ethan drew his sidearm out of instinct. Useless, but symbolic. He fired once. The round hit nothing but heat haze. Then the first extractor lunged. What happened next could not be seen, only felt. Viella moved like a wave of geometry breaking into flesh. The air cracked around her, and the extractor crumpled, twitching, as if time had folded around his nervous system. Ethan stared, stunned. What did you do? Viella turned to him. Her pupils were now vertical, her skin shifting with translucent patterns. I remembered who I was meant to be. The other 2 extractors attacked. Ethan rolled aside as a blade of pure energy split the sand beside him. He tackled one, wrestled for the weapon, and was nearly impaled, until Viella sent a shockwave through the ground that flung both enemies backward. Silence fell again. 3 bodies lay broken. The desert was dark, but not empty. Viella stumbled. Ethan caught her. Blood, black and silver, dripped from her side. They nicked my weave, she gasped. I cannot shift form again. Not until I recover. Ethan held her tightly. In that moment, something else awoke between them. Not power, not prophecy, but fury. Then we run, he said. Where to? He looked at the stars. Wherever they don't expect us. They vanished into the dunes. Behind them, the base began to quake. The echo had been heard, and the world would never be the same. The dunes stretched endlessly, not just in distance, but in time. Each grain of sand was a witness, to secret flights, to ancient craft buried before mankind knew the wheel, to whispers of lovers and liars alike. Ethan and Viella ran until their shadows grew long and the stars bled crimson on the horizon. She stumbled once. He caught her. Her body was lighter now, as if bleeding had pulled her closer to the veil between dimensions. Her skin pulsed less with color and more with memory. He wrapped her in a blanket from the emergency kit in his old Jeep, hidden years ago in a forgotten ravine where he used to stargaze in silence. They reached it. It still worked. With Viella cradled in the passenger seat, her head against the window, Ethan drove. Hours passed. Maybe more. They came upon it just before sunrise, a ghost town swallowed by sand. 6 structures, an abandoned chapel, 2 saloons, a general store, all hollowed out by time and wind. But something stirred beneath it. Ethan parked the Jeep. Viella lifted her head weakly. This place is older than it looks. He nodded. Locals say it was cursed. In the 1800s, miners vanished. But some claimed they dug too deep, found something that made their minds unravel. Viella's lips curved faintly. Echoes. Inside the chapel, they made camp. Ethan started a fire, though there was no need for warmth, only comfort. He bound her wound with gauze, unsure if it would help. Then, as the fire flickered, Viella touched his hand. Images flooded him, but not visions this time. Memories. He saw a boy in a hospital, alone. A voice on a radio that spoke to him when no one else would. Lights outside his window, dancing in coded rhythm. And then, years later, a woman with eyes like galaxies appearing in his dreams, long before he ever stepped into Facility E7. It had always been her, and it had always been him. We are not new, she said softly. We are ancient. Repeating. Remembering. Why us? He asked. Viella looked at him, truly looked. Her eyes, though black, shimmered now with hints of color. Green, amber, violet. Because love is not random. It's a beacon, and some of us were made to follow it through time. Suddenly, the chapel groaned. A trapdoor under the altar creaked open, not by Ethan's hand, not by Viola's, by something below. She sat up straighter, strength returning. Someone else remembers. They stepped down into the dark. Below the chapel, a chamber carved by non-human hands waited. At its center, a mural, thousands of years old, depicting a human man holding a gray woman beneath a sky full of burning stars. And beneath them, a world divided, and a single word carved in a language neither had spoken, yet both understood. Unification. The chamber beneath the chapel was impossibly vast, carved not with tools, but intention. The walls breathed gently, pulsing with light that seemed to synchronize with Viola's fading energy. Ethan walked ahead, his boots echoing softly on the smooth black floor. As he passed the ancient mural of man and gray, his skin prickled. The glyphs that ringed the artwork shifted as he neared, not physically, but perceptually, as though the chamber was adapting itself to his understanding. Viola followed, her hand brushing the wall. It responded to her touch like flesh made of light. "This was not built by my kind," she whispered. "Nor yours." He turned. "Then who?" A new voice answered, deep, resonant, tinged with sorrow. "Those of us in between." Figures stepped from the shadows. There were 5. Their forms were almost human, but not quite. Taller, eyes wider, skin that flickered like heat mirages. Their voices carried harmonics that tickled the edge of Ethan's sanity, yet soothed it simultaneously. The eldest stepped forward. A woman, or something once called a woman, with silver hair that floated gently in still air. "We are the Echoborn, the result of love and fear, blended over cycles. Descendants of those who remembered too much and could not forget." Ethan stared. "Hybrids." "Not merely," she replied. "We are bridges, living memories. And you two," she looked to Viola, then to Ethan, "are the final signal." Viola stepped forward. "Why was I drawn to him?" "Because your code was incomplete, and his pain filled the gaps." Ethan's breath hitched. The chamber brightened. A circular platform rose from the floor, revealing a crystalline device, shaped like an orb split in two, waiting to be joined. "This," said the Echoborn, "is the unifier. It was made by those who foresaw this convergence, but it cannot be activated by logic or command." Viola approached the device. Ethan followed. "It must be felt," said the Echoborn. "It needs the resonance of two who remember each other not through time, but through love." Viola reached out. Ethan placed his hand beside hers. The halves of the unifier began to hum. A light burst through the chamber, swallowing the air. And suddenly, Ethan remembered. A life on another world. A war lost. Viola dying in his arms. A vow. "Next time, we'll find each other sooner." He looked at her now. Her eyes overflowed with light. "We found each other," he said. "Before the end," she replied. The unifier clicked into place. Above them, across the desert, and throughout the world, signals distorted. Satellites lost synchronization. Drones failed midair. Firewalls crumbled. But something deeper changed. The dimensional veil began to fold inward. And on the other side, something watched. Waiting. The unifier spun above the platform, levitating in a field of pure resonance. Its light was no longer white, nor blue, nor gold, but a color Ethan couldn't name, like the sound of a lost language spoken underwater. All around them, the chamber shook, not from instability, but awakening. The Echoborn stood in a silent circle, watching, waiting. The eldest approached Ethan and Viola with a heavy look, not of sorrow, but of reverence. "What you choose now will determine which world survives." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean, which world?" The eldest gestured to the unifier. "This device doesn't merely unlock knowledge. It links realities. Across the veil lies a realm twisted by what your kind would call entropy. It has watched Earth for eons, jealous of its balance, craving its structure. Viella stepped closer to Ethan, her expression grave. The folded realm, the broken twin of your universe. If we don't seal it, said the elder Echoborn, it will flood into ours, not with invasion, but with unmaking. Your oceans will boil, your skies will tear. Even thought will become unreliable. Ethan looked to the unifier, now vibrating with increasing intensity. And how do we stop it? The answer came from Viella, softly. We go through. Ethan turned to her, stunned. What? The unifier isn't a weapon. It's a beacon. It calls to minds capable of folding reality back into coherence. It needs two, one of each kind, willing to bind themselves forever in a place beyond time. He stared at her, horror and wonder rising in equal measure. We wouldn't come back. She nodded, eyes shining. But Earth would survive. It would remember us in myths, maybe even in dreams. He took a step back. There has to be another way. Viella touched his face, her fingers cool and trembling. This is the other way. Ethan's heart pounded. He felt the heat of the chamber, the pulse of the unifier, the weight of the choice pressing down on every atom of his being. But then he saw her, really saw her, and not just her alien form, but every version of her he had ever glimpsed in dreams, visions, memories not his own. She had always found him, and he had always chosen her. He nodded. They stepped onto the platform together. The unifier surged. The chamber vanished. Somewhere beyond time, a field of stars, folding, crashing, rebirthing. A realm of echoes, of unfinished thoughts, of possible futures. Ethan and Viella stood together, bodies fading, minds blazing like novas. We're not dying, he whispered. We're becoming something else. Viella smiled. We are the balance. Their forms merged into light, two pulses intertwining in eternal orbit. An earth exhaled. Above the Nevada desert, the sky shimmered briefly, then cleared. The signals stabilized. The extraction units vanished. The war that never began had quietly ended. The ghost town stood still once more. But if you listened closely, some nights, beneath the chapel floor, the wind still whispered two names. Ethan, Viella, and the stars remembered. The world did not notice immediately. The sun still rose. Traffic still snarled. Politicians still lied. But in quiet corners, in the spaces between headlines and heartbeats, the universe shifted. It began with dreams. Children across the globe, in Mongolia, Argentina, Kenya, Slovakia, began to speak of the same things upon waking. Of a man and a woman made of stars. Of a great gate in the sky. Of a voice that hummed with longing and warmth. Some drew symbols they had never learned. Others whispered names that had no language. And one child, a boy named Samuel Quinn, just 6 years old, awoke from a dream in rural Oregon and said, very clearly, "They're keeping the door shut for us. We have to remember them." His parents wept. They didn't know why. At a remote observatory in Chile, Dr. Amelia Sorensen stared at her telescope's data feed with a numb expression. A region of deep space once considered static had shifted in structure, like fabric folding differently after eons of tension. A dark rift once observed at the galactic edge was now gone. In its place, a soft spiral of light. She submitted the findings. They were dismissed. She published them anonymously. They went viral. Among amateur astronomers, the phenomenon was nicknamed the Veil Flower. Meanwhile, deep within the remnants of Facility E7, the survivors of the Purge found something in the old chapel ruins. Behind the ancient mural, hidden in a layer of stone, was a crystal tablet, humming faintly, encoded with impossible data. Dr. Keene, now broken and lost, sat before it for days. One evening, he wrote on the walls of his bunk in trembling hand. They were real, and they changed everything without lifting a weapon. Then he vanished. No one ever found him. But perhaps the most haunting sign was heard, not seen. At precisely 3:14 a.m., in a small-town radio station in South Dakota, every frequency bled static for 20 seconds. Then, amid the hiss, a voice whispered, "Ethan." And another answered, "Viella." And then silence. Something had shifted. Not the laws of physics. Not yet. But something subtler. In people's dreams. In the patterns of their thoughts. In the way they looked up at the stars, as if expecting someone to wave back. The folded realm had been held at bay, but not destroyed. And somewhere between worlds, Ethan and Viella remained. Not dead, not alive, but watching, guiding, remembering. 3 years later, the world had moved on. Mostly. The desert where Facility E7 once stood was now fenced off, marked as unstable terrain by the US Geological Survey. But those who had been inside knew better. They called it the scar. Governments dismissed the veilflower anomaly, silenced the child dream testimonies, and buried every remnant of the Unifier project. But the signal never truly died. It waited. June 30th, 2025, 2:11 a.m. Deep beneath Tokyo, a rogue research collective known only as the Hollow Key reactivated a mirror node, an unstable prototype built from fragments of the crystal tablet found beneath the chapel ruins. They had decoded the frequency. They had replicated the pulse. And now, they would send it back. Aboard their makeshift vessel, cobbled from stolen tech and layered with neural dampeners, they launched a synthetic echo into the folded horizon. Across the dimensional membrane, where logic twisted and time bent like reeds in dark water, a presence stirred. 2 pulses, bound in orbit, watching always, felt the tremor. Ethan and Viella. Their consciousness, once whole, now danced in the very fabric of interdimensional balance. They were the guardians of the veil, the ligature keeping chaos from flooding into form. They sensed the intrusion, the greed behind it, the ignorance, and something in them wept. The signal struck the folded realm. Reality trembled. Back on Earth, auroras flared in skies that should never see them. Animals howled in synchrony. Oceans stilled for 7 full seconds. But then, silence. And in that silence, a voice returned. Not from Ethan, not from Viella, but from the veil itself. You were warned. And then, the sky tore. A ripple, faint but undeniable, stretched across the firmament. For a moment, humanity stood on the brink again. But then, a light. From the veilflower spiral, 2 forms emerged, not physical, not ghostly, but symbolic, woven of memory and resonance. Ethan and Viella. One last time. Not yet, they whispered in unison. Their presence cascaded through satellites, frequencies, subconscious dreams, into the hearts of everyone who had once remembered them. The veil sealed, the rupture faded, and humanity exhaled. 1 year later, in a primary school in Lisbon, Portugal, a girl named Amália painted a picture for her teacher. It showed 2 glowing figures holding hands in a garden of stars, surrounded by spirals and glyphs no one had taught her. When asked what it was, she smiled and said, "It's where love lives when the world forgets." Thus ends the tale. Ethan and Viella, man and grey, love and echo, became not just memory, but myth. Not lost, not erased, but engraved in the subconscious of a species still learning how to love without fear. And the stars still watch.